Hi, and welcome to tonight's episode of Mind Explorations. And today I did promise you a Chicago Hypnosis Conference, a special, another one. However, turns out Annie isn't at the conference at all, but we're going to use that as a cool segue to go into our next sessions in the future that we haven't set up yet, but we will. And if you would like to share something or would like to be in Annie's spot, then let me know. Send me a message or come and join the Mind Explorations group on Facebook. And yeah, let's chat and see whether you're a good fit to, to be interviewed or present something or demo something, whatever it is that you want to do. So, first of all, welcome, Annie, to this wonderful show. And you were at the Michigan Hypnosis Conference, and that's, I think, how we know each other, or indirectly through various people. And you are in, well, peak performance, really. So the name of the interview tonight is Find Flow on Purpose, right? So tell me a little bit about your background and where you're from, etc., first of all, before we
For
get
sure.
into it.
Thank you for having me this evening, even if there was a little bit of confusion between us of
We make
why I
something
am
out of
appearing.
everything.
But I appreciate us going ahead with the interview anyway. So yeah, I'm Annie. I'm originally from England, but I live in British Columbia now in Canada. And I specialize in working with athletes from all the way from kind of recreational athletes to amateur competitive athletes to pro athletes. Because I am kind of on a mission to make people more aware that, athletes aren't just professional. I think
Mhm.
anybody who enjoys their sport is, in my mind, an athlete. But it can be a little bit intimidating to call yourself that sometimes. But I do have a special interest with working with athletes because of my own background. So, I've been a lover of sports for my whole life. I was very active when I was young. I still am. Part of the reason I moved to Canada was so that I could immerse myself more in adventure sports because I've been a climber since I was 12 years old. And now I live in a small mountain town where that kind of thing is on my doorstep.
Wow.
So, I can climb, I can mountain bike. In the winter, I can snowboard. So it's kind of the perfect environment for me. And so also a lot of the athletes that I work with are in adventure sports because that's the area that I live in, but I also resonate with people on that level and connect with people and have personal experience in that.
Mhm.
So I tend to present to a lot of groups that involve that kind of athlete, but I do work with athletes in general. But in terms of personally as well, most recently, um, in the last few years, as a competitive athlete, I actually started competing in the sport of arm wrestling. And
Oh,
I fell into that completely accidentally. I don't necessarily look like a stereotypical arm wrestler or what you might think that looks like. But I just clicked with that sport and I loved it immediately. I loved the technique. And then within 2 years of starting that sport, I became a four-time national Canadian champion at arm wrestling. And I that qualified me for world championships
wow.
that year, and I came ninth in the world. Um, so that is
Congratulations.
a little fun fact about me. And that's one of the reasons I love working with athletes, obviously.
Right. Just before we move on, what's the special thing about arm wrestling? What's so fascinating about it?
So I had no idea that it was an actual sport before I got into it, other than, messing around at school or kind of asking a friend to arm wrestle jokingly or, in a bar or something like that. But when I started, the thing that I love about it is that it's not really about strength.
Mhm.
I mean, strength helps, obviously, but it's so much more about technique.
Mhm.
And the technique is pretty extensive and it's about reading your opponent and knowing what they are going to do or what they're potentially going to do. And rather than thinking of it like arm wrestling, it's not really about your arm. It's
Okay.
about your hand and your hand control and your back as well, and strengthen your back a lot. And the cool thing about it is that it's not just using your arm. It's actually a more of a full body sport, which may sound strange, but we have a specific table that we use
Mhm.
where, you may be arm wrestling with your right hand, but there's a peg to hold for your left. So you can kind of use a push pull. You're also allowed to push against the table with your legs. So there's a whole range of things
Right.
to do, and I really love anything, whether it's sport or other things in life that have like this integral technique to it.
Mhm.
And so I think, and same goes for why I enjoy climbing as well. So that was why I kind of fell in love with it.
Right. So, okay. And what climbing means rock climbing, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, rock
Yeah,
climbing.
okay. So you hang on mountains and and rocks.
Well, I tend not to just hang out there, but yeah, in the summertime, I'm climbing outdoors
Mhm.
and I'm doing what we call leading most of the time, which is when the rope is below you and you're kind of climbing up the rock face and clipping it in to
Yeah.
basically give yourself that safety line. And there is more risk involved with that compared to being on what we call a top rope when the rope is
Hmm.
above you. And so if you fall when you're top roping, you're really just falling like that little bit of stretch in the rope. But when you're leading, there is a lot more, um, the rope is slack and you're going to fall more distance. So there is
Yeah.
that extra level of fear that
Hmm.
comes into that kind of rock climbing. And so when I work with climbers, quite often that is an element of why they're coming to me because, there is a point where we have to climb above the clip and we're on
Mm.
a loose rope at that point. And so
Yeah.
if you make a move and, you could potentially fall. And so there's certain things that may make you more likely to fall, like over gripping. And so
Hmm.
that's something that we tend to work on because the more relaxed we can stay,
Yeah.
the less, stressed our body is going to get, and the more we can focus in that present moment. And so, but if there's fear happening, you're more likely to tense up. So it's kind of finding the balance between those things, which is where that essence of flow comes in.
Hmm. Okay, so what kinds of clients do you have? From which kinds of sports and which level are they from?
So most recently I've seen, because it's been summer, I've been seeing more summer clients, and obviously like where I'm live, there's very much quite a strict summer and winter
Yeah.
schedule of weather. So we tend to switch sports for the season. So out here, I've been seeing mostly this summer, it's been rock climbers, mountain bikers, and ultra marathon runners.
Right.
So that's a big one, actually. Again, that has a really big mental aspect because obviously these people are um, putting themselves through many hours of what, when their mind can go through all sorts of peaks and troughs of feeling good and not feeling good, but needing to continue. So that is another um, kind of group of athletes that I really enjoy working with. And because of where I live again, there is a lot of ultra marathons that go on in the
Mhm.
mountains. And so that is a population that I really enjoy working with.
Right. So which levels would they be on? Are they all pros or all amateurs?
I honestly work more with amateurs.
Hmm.
And or I kind of separate into three with like recreational, amateur, where they are competing and they're in basically like an amateur league or they're moving into pro. And so I do work with the odd pro athlete, but it tends to be more of the recreational amateur because there is more of those
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
But then I have worked with pro athletes as well who are competing at a higher level, a more elite level, and that tends to be more remote work when I do that.
Right. So with these all these different types of clients, do you have different types of processes, or is the kind of flow that they need? Let's go there first. Is the kind of flow they need, is that different among the different types of clients?
What they want to focus on is
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
The process is not necessarily different.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like just having a different type of client in other areas of hypnotherapy. You adjust your process to that specific
Hmm.
client depending on what
Hmm.
they're looking for. But I'd say the general aspects of when I'm talking about finding flow on purpose is generally overarching the same.
Hmm.
But then what just may be different will be certain elements of their sport and how, like if I'm talking to a climber, we're gonna focus more on those issues that I was talking about. So I'll be relating what we're doing in the process to their sport. And so really
Hmm.
that's the only difference is that, in our conversation and when we're doing, hypnosis in like a progressive relaxation way, and I'm giving suggestions and an induction, then that will be tailored specifically to them and specifically to their sport.
Hmm.
But otherwise, the process is generally the same.
Right. And there's no difference between amateurs and top athletes in the process, or in the
It
way you let them find flow?
it tends to be when I'm dealing with pros, they tend to want to already be at a level where they're aware of mindset and mental techniques that they can
Hmm.
use to perform even better.
Right.
So, and that's usually where they're going when I'm working with pros. They just they want to level up from where they are, but they're already tend to be doing well. Or sometimes I'm helping them deal with a setback like an injury that they are
Right.
struggling to maybe even though they may have physically recovered, to then pair that with mental recovery because it's
Yeah.
it's stopping them from um, doing a certain thing in their
Hmm.
sport. Whereas recreational amateur tend to be more on like the self-doubt, confidence when it comes to their sport and lowering that level of like performance anxiety, which is where flow comes in for them. There tends to be more of that at that level. And that's not to say that doesn't exist for pro athletes as well, because though they are under a lot of pressure from different things, maybe from themselves is the biggest one, coaches, family, or they may be sensing that pressure from those people, or whether it is actually there or not, but that often is what we're working through. Um, so yeah, there is a difference in what people come to me for, but then I see everything at all levels as well.
Yeah. All right. So, what kind of processes do you use in your sessions, and what kind of techniques or modalities as well?
So when it comes to hypnotherapy, I find to get these athletes to be able to put themselves into flow more easily.
Hmm.
I really love using a progressive relaxation with them
Hmm.
because I'm lowering their stress levels, and that is what I want them to do before they perform. And when they can also, have a recording and listen to that themselves on a regular basis and before they perform, it can, get into their pre-performance routine so
Hmm.
that they routinely do these things. And so, the next routine thing is that they then are able to perform exactly how they want to, in a sense where they're fully in the present moment. It's effortless. And that level of challenge, it's just above their skill level. And that is kind of where we see that optimal performance, that optimal level of flow. Um, and there's a guideline. It isn't necessarily scientific law, but in the world of flow, It's said that that perfect balance between challenge and skill is just
Mhm.
4%. So you want to have a challenge that it's kind of 4% um, above ish, 4% ish
Mhm.
above your current skill level, because arousal or a small amount of stress um, is great for our performance. It pushes
Mhm.
us to a level that isn't over exerting us physically and mentally. And so obviously there is a point where that challenge becomes too high.
Yeah.
And so that tends to have the opposite effect. But if finding that sweet spot is when things kind of become effortless
Yeah.
to the athlete, and they're fully present in that moment to a point where time it kind of there's kind of that time distortion,
Yeah.
and it's almost like being in a deep trance where you're not sure how long you've been in trance for, or it either feel, and it can go either way, right? You can feel like, oh, that run that I just skied, I felt like I was there for 10 minutes because
Mm.
I was in it so deeply, but in reality, it was 1 minute.
Yeah.
And so it's very relatable to hypnotherapy in general. And so, again, that's another thing that they can connect with. And so that's what
Mhm.
I tend to do more of in sessions. And then I give the athletes practical tools that they can use. So, techniques to center themselves before competing, to center themselves, to ground themselves, and to lower that stress, and give them visualization exercises to basically um, help them to imagine exactly how it's going to feel
Mm.
when they're performing, including, and go into a lot of detail with that, um, including all of our senses. So visually, for anyone that's aware of that VACOG, those visual, auditory,
Oh yeah.
kinesthetic, and then olfactory and gustatory, so scent,
Yeah.
smell, and taste, as well as feeling, seeing, hearing. And we might not think things like what we smell and what we taste are important, but even as athletes, walking into a certain scene, whether you're walking into a football field or a rock face or whatever it is, or a
Mhm.
changing room, it might not be a
Yeah.
great smell, but smell and things like that. So I really want them to immerse themselves in that
Mhm.
and connect with it, and then kind of anchor how they want to feel to that. So when they're
Mhm.
actually there and experiencing that, then they automatically feel that way. They kind of go on autopilot
Right. Yeah.
to experience that. And another thing I do for them is like physical anchoring.
Mhm.
Again, elicit a state with them, help them anchor that state, and then help them access that, which will allow them to access that when they need it.
Mhm.
And so that is something that I have found particularly useful for them,
Yeah.
because athletes, and I know this from personal experience, we need to be resilient because there is going to be setbacks, most likely,
Yeah.
for any athlete out there at some point in their career of being an athlete, whatever that looks like for them. Um, it doesn't just keep going on that linear track of getting better and better and better. There are going to be little dips there. Even if it's like they're in a game and they feel like they make a wrong move or something like that, then that ability to just move on from that and
Mhm.
be in the present moment, that moment is done. Now I'm in the next moment and I'm just focusing on what I'm doing now. And so having that mental attitude to be resilient in that sense is something that is so, so important as an athlete.
Mm.
And so that's one of the big things that we work on as well.
Okay. So you were talking about the world of flow earlier and the rules in the world of flow, the 4% between challenge and skill level. What other rules are there in the world of flow?
So there's a few elements, and I did mention them as well there, in that when you have all these elements, that's when flow tends to happen
Okay.
more likely to happen. So it's things like having a clear goal. And what actually I love about these elements of flow is that as hypnotherapists, this is something we all work with our clients on
Mhm.
anyway. And so when I say these
Yeah.
things, you're going to be like, well, I do that because we know this
Yeah.
and we also work on ourselves with this as well. So yeah, the first one is having clear goals.
Mhm.
Because once we have clear goals, there's no ambiguity
Yeah.
of what we're trying to achieve. So that again, that helps with the visualization. So when they know exactly how they want to perform, then and having that clear goal, it just helps them get into that state a lot better.
Mm.
The other I mentioned that as well is that time distortion. So
Right. So that is a
integrating
necessary
everything,
factor.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that absolutely all of these need to occur
Yeah.
for flow to
Okay.
happen, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not like, oh, if they don't have this one thing, nope, there's no chance.
Hmm.
But this is just from um, from researchers and that kind of thing. They've said
Mm.
these are the elements that need to be there,
Yeah.
but not necessarily they're not absolutely necessary. It's not
Yeah.
mandatory that they all need to be
Yeah.
there. So there's that effect of time distortion,
Hmm.
you know, whether they feel that time is sped up or that it's kind of slowed down in that moment. And that might be something like a sprinter, maybe noticing every deliberate, um, each of their feet hitting the ground. What,
Hmm.
and you know, maybe it feels like they ran for a minute when in reality they ran for 10 seconds or something like that. So having that kind of sense, also a sense, of it kind of being effortless as well. So that is as that is a big one. And again, that like we said, that challenge level
Hmm.
of being right at that point where that integration between skill and challenge is the perfect sweet spot for
Hmm.
them. And yeah, that 4% rule, which again is not strict, as in, oh,
Yeah.
5% is not there, 3% is not there. That's not what we're talking about
Just
that in a general
approximate
sense.
rule of thumb. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, we're looking at those kind of elements be um, to be there for the athletes, but it's not mandatory for them all to be there.
Hmm. Right. So let's say that you work with somebody over a certain amount of time, and you help them with the 4% skill and challenge. How quickly can they move up, or how quickly can they improve normally?
I notice a difference immediately.
Hmm.
They tend to notice immediately, even after one session. And it depends, you know, what their goal was with the hypnotherapy. Some people, I do just work with them for one session, but some people want to go even deeper. So, you know, for
Right.
the one session, maybe they need a reset, or maybe they are struggling with a particular issue that they want to work on, and that improves to a level that they're happy with.
Yeah.
Um, but I tend that there is um, more benefit and that result increases by doing more sessions. And often what I might do is a series of sessions kind of close together to
Hmm.
really instill those experiences and feelings that they're looking
Hmm.
for and how they want to perform. And then they'll often see me again on a kind of ad hoc basis of like when they
Right.
either want to, you know, want a reset or feel that they need another session or before competition. So
Hmm.
that is definitely a popular way the athletes will do that. They'll do a series of sessions, and then when they've got a competition coming up, they will see me again to kind of
Right.
just bring all that back into their awareness for
Hmm.
them. And then with some athletes as well, depending on the challenges that they're having, I also do NLP as well. And
Hmm.
so With the NLP, I'm working with people at a deeper level in the sense of it's more of an identity change. So some people are um, having issues more with their beliefs, their values, and these have been created in whatever their experiences were in the past. And if they're struggling with this to a deeper level, and often if they are, it's not just in their sport, it's
Right.
in other areas of their life. If we're talking about something like anxiety or a higher level of anxiety, um, then I do some deeper NLP work with them to really look into maybe where did these beliefs first come from and
Mm.
how can we change the meaning that you've assigned to it. And
Right.
that's not to say we're going to get rid of that completely, but how can we disassociate from that? So take a step back and know that that experience doesn't have to affect us in the future.
Hmm.
And then also dealing in the same way using like quantum time techniques, so similar to timeline therapy to do that, and also regulation of emotions as well, which is
Hmm.
a big part of sports, and it comes into that resilience piece as well,
Hmm.
because dealing with things like anger on a football pitch or something like
Yeah.
that. Something may happen that makes you angry that you need to be able to move on from very quickly.
Mm.
And that can be something that some people struggle with,
Right.
um, as well as other emotions. So I do the deeper kind of identity level work as well with those who want or need that.
Hmm. Right. So, oh, what was I going to ask? I was going to ask something very specific. Repetition. You were talking about that you repeat the sessions, but so I know that actual practice and mental practice can be very similar in what they bring in results. How important, though, is the actual physical practice for them in between sessions or in combination with hypnotherapy or in
Do you mean
general?
like their physical training that they're doing
Yeah,
for their sport anyway?
yeah.
I mean, I personally, when I'm working with athletes, I want to instill that mental training is at least as equally important as physical,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
physical training is still obviously still very important.
Hmm.
Strength and conditioning, skill work, and actually the best thing is tying the mental to the physical. They are not separate entities,
Yeah.
because one is helping the other, and we need both. And one is not better than the other. So
Mm.
it's not that, oh, I'm good for the physical, and then I can kind of just, maybe I can lower the amount of skill sessions that I need to go to, training sessions. Then no, they still need to do that, obviously. But for those athletes that may not be so attuned to mental training, they will see their physical side increase significantly
Hmm.
when they add in the mental training. So I would
Right.
say, yeah, they're equal, at least equal to each other. And if I had
Hmm.
to absolutely say what is more important, I'm a hypnotherapist who specializes in mental sports performance training, so I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that, if you have two people who have trained physically exactly the same, the one who has that mindset portion is going to be more successful because they
Hmm.
just believe in themselves
Yeah.
more. And that's not to say that naturally that other person doesn't have some of that. But again, it's like the physical. If one has trained physically
Yeah.
a lot more than the other, then they are also more likely to be
Yeah.
more successful. And so it's just adding another level of um,
Performance.
confidence building
Yeah. So it's the mental
into.
muscle that you add as well into the mix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mental muscle. And it's just
Yeah.
like muscle memory too.
Okay. Do you ever like go to somebody where they're training and do therapy there? Like, do you combine the two, as in, okay, feel your hands touching the rock now, or whatever, in real
I
life?
I don't tend to go and do that with them
Mhm.
because I don't need to, honestly,
Okay.
in the sense of when I'm getting, the level that I'm getting them to imagine this out with their really vivid imagination, they can sense it as if they're feeling touching that rock.
Hmm.
And they've touched rock before many
Yeah.
times. So
Yeah.
they know that feeling. They already know what that is. So we don't need to be right in that environment in order to do that. The only time that I may be in be where they might be performing is if they have asked me to be there for a competition. That doesn't
Mm.
happen often. Mainly, I'm working with them if, I might be working with them in that week before
Mhm.
competition, but I am giving them everything they need to be able at that point to be able to do that themselves
Mhm.
and build that kind of purposeful flow feeling so that they can um, bring it to themselves into that state when they're competing. Because at
Right.
that point, their coach can be there for support
Mhm.
in whatever, physically what they're doing. And also, their coach is going to support them from a emotional, mental aspect as well. So it isn't often necessary that I'm actually there with them when they're performing.
Right. Um, Going back to the imagination that they have, do they all have that, or do you have any tricks to make the imagination much stronger? I mean, you did mention VAKOG, VAKOG
Yes.
earlier.
Um,
So do you use any tricks, any special things to make sure that they're really immersed into their imagination and the yeah, visualization?
Yeah, some people are naturally just stronger visual people. And so some people find it very easy to go deeper into deeper levels of
Hmm.
visualization. And so not just visually, and they find that easy. Some people don't. And
Hmm.
um those people, if I meet an athlete and I'm like, oh, have you ever done any visualization before? And they're like, oh, yeah, I visualize all the time. And then I'll say, okay, can you tell me like what you visualize? And they're like, yeah, I picture myself on the football pitch.
Ah.
And I'm like, okay, and what else? And they're like, oh, that's it. I mean, okay. So it's going at a much deeper level. And I'm talking them through this and what I'm doing with them. So for example, let's say somebody they want to feel that flow. They want to feel like everything is effortless for them.
Hmm.
I will get them to recall either a moment where they have felt that in the past, and it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be sport related. It could be a personal moment because sometimes, even as hypnotherapists, you know, you might be able to, well, I imagine you can relate to this, and I've experienced it, where I
Hmm.
have that kind of feeling on a session with somebody.
Yeah.
It's effortless, and maybe that challenge is just a little bit higher, and time kind of disappears a bit and clients experience that too. And
Yeah.
so, and then that energy transfer between client and therapist, you feel more integrated at that point.
Hmm.
So people will have experienced most likely this feeling before, so they can relate it to something. If not, I get them to imagine how they would want to feel. And I get
Hmm.
them to create a picture of this, and we add in all of those elements of visual, sounds they're hearing, feelings they're either like feelings they're physically feeling, like what you said, of
Hmm.
like a hand on the rock, or maybe they're a pitcher in
Hmm.
baseball and how that ball feels, how the sand feels on their shoes, things like that. And so we go really deeply into that. And when they have that picture, what I do, I get them to bring that picture closer towards them. And as they do, I talk them through this, obviously. And this is called shifting submodalities. So the
Hmm.
submodalities are all these different levels of what I'm talking about. And so, for example, with the colors, I'll get them to make them more vivid, more vibrant, get them to pop, and then as they do that, they might just notice their feeling of flow increase and that effortless feeling. And so I show them how they can do this
Mhm.
themselves. I obviously do it with them in a session,
Yeah.
um, depending on, and not every session with them is the same. You know, they bring different things to the table for that week,
Mhm.
that they may have been dealing with. But having something like this that they can do themselves, and that can take like 30 seconds to do.
Mhm.
Once they've done it a few times, they can do it much more quickly. So when we're talking about somebody competing, that is just something they can do very, very quickly to remind
Right.
themselves of that feeling that they want to experience. So
Mm.
that is a big one that I use for them.
Right. Hmm. And you were talking earlier about leading in rock climbing. That means you've got the extra stress factor added to that. How do you work with clients, performance clients who experience that higher amount of stress or who need to tone it down and become more resilient?
Yeah, in that sense, and I'll use rock climbing as the example again here because there is a physical element of fear involved.
Hmm.
It's not just a kind of fear of failure or that anxious fear before you. It's a literal fear
Hmm.
of like falling, which is something that is kind of innate in us as humans because obviously that is a threat.
Yeah.
So it's completely normal and I use it. So, you know, we're not trying to just push this away and
Hmm.
ignore it. But, you know, I use things like creating an energy in the rope so that the rope is kind of connected to them and part of them and their energy is flowing through it. To kind of reframe things a little bit, it's not a separate entity. It is part
Yeah.
of who they are and what they are doing, and it's there to support them. It
Right.
is a supportive accessory or piece of
Hmm.
equipment. And so I help them to basically build this relationship with that because, you know, it's when people have come to me, it's like, yes, the rope is going to catch me, but I don't necessarily believe to a point, even though I know it will, you
Yeah.
know, it might not. But so by creating this relationship and this energy, I find that really helps people. And then also to focus in on their movements.
Hmm.
So, you know, that is them being in that present moment of this is where we go into exactly how the rock is
Yeah.
feeling for them, feeling under their hands, how that makes them feel, and thinking about the move that they are doing at the present
Mm.
time. Because if we go too far ahead of ourselves, and especially in rock climbing, you know, if you've just clipped in, so you're safe there, and you're already thinking about the next clip, then you're not in the present moment because
Yeah.
there's a few moves that you need to do before you're going to get there. And
Mhm.
so keeping them fully in that present moment is something that we work a lot on and
Yeah.
tuning in to different parts of the body and how they all connect to help them climb up the
Hmm.
wall.
Yeah, and that also takes away any anxiety. That's one of the techniques I know as anxiety reduction. If you have somebody focus on a body part or anything else but
Yes.
their head,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that
Okay.
distraction, right? And we
Yeah.
want to um put that feeling into them where they know exactly what they're going to do
Hmm.
and they know the feeling that they're going to get when they do it. And so it's not
Yeah.
there's no question about it.
Yeah.
And so
It's the
that's what
certainty.
makes it
Yeah.
effortless. Yeah.
Yeah, the certainty gives them
Yeah.
effortlessness. Okay, wonderful. By the way, anybody who's listening on the live right now, if you have any questions, put them into the chat just so I don't forget to say that. Um, so what are your best tips for hypnotherapists who might be watching this, who want to get into it or want to improve it? Because I know at least one person who among our group who wants to really improve their game with performance and with flow. How did you build up your client base? I mean, for you, you're established now, but when you started, how did you work? Did you go with one type of client or one sport, or how did you do it, and how would you advise newbies or yeah, people who want to get into the field to do that, to get
So the way that
clients?
I did it and the way that I continue to do it is through networking
Mm-hmm.
because that is in terms of general marketing, that's how I prefer to do it. And when I say networking, I mean I don't just mean networking with other people in our profession, but I look to where these athletes might be. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm contacting different sports teams, different groups. I'm also speaking to health professionals, physiotherapists, massage therapists. I am actually also a massage therapist. So I see clients on that basis too, and I see athletes for that as well. Um, and so because these athletes are in other places, and
Mm-hmm.
they are usually working with other practitioners, maybe they're working with nutritionists as well.
Yeah.
And so then I connect with these people and I basically present to them, have conversations with them to show them, to actually demo to them rather than just telling them um, how hypnotherapy can help them in their
Mm-hmm.
sport. And I like that on a personal level as well because it just gives me more connection with people. There's more kind of community building, there's more conversations happening. And I sometimes working remotely, I miss that human connection because I'm on a screen a lot. And so I like to go and do that kind of thing. And that's honestly the best way that I have found that I can gain clients is that, I'm looking or I'm thinking about where are these people?
Mm.
What are they doing? Where are they going? I go to climbing gyms and give presentations and workshops. And I do that for many other sports. So for example, this summer I've been to ultramarathon training camps. I've been to mountain bike training camps. Um, and some of them I take part in as well. I don't run, but I do mountain bike. So I like to do that myself. And then I'll do a little segment on the kind of mental aspects. Um, so that's how I like to do it. And that's how I would recommend anyone to do. Because then also, once you've created that relationship with that person, um, they tend to they may refer more people to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't presently do like group training.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something I really want to kind of expand into
Right.
because, a lot of a lot of people work or do their sport in teams, either physically in a team or even an individual sport. They're practicing with a team or they're part of a team of individuals. And so that is kind of the next thing that I'm looking to do is that so that I can work with teams and coaches kind of all
Mm-hmm.
together.
So, what would be the difference in that work compared to individual work?
I think it's more in the building that relationship with the team as a
Mm-hmm.
whole.
Right.
There are these individual elements and things that they individually want to work on, but they're going to have goals as a team too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the coach comes into that too, and also, the mental aspects and the mental training of the coach is extremely important because this is the person that um, these athletes are looking for
Yeah.
support from, and they're also looking for emotional and mental support from their
Yeah.
coach as well as physical kind of tips on in the middle of a performance of what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing. And so I do really I like to work with coaches as well, and I have worked with them on an individual basis, but not with them and their team as a whole. So that is something that I would really love to do. Because
Yeah.
there's personal goals that each athlete will have, but then, like I said, there's team goals as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do coaches profit from hypnotherapy? Especially what subjects, what things do they need to learn or do they need help with?
Helping them to see where their athletes are coming from.
Hmm.
for
Ah, yeah.
them to understand what their athletes are going through. And maybe, and oftentimes I'm working with them on issues that they may have,
Right.
whether they have confidence issues or self-doubt, or they're at a level where they're already doing well, but they want to help their team do even better. And, maybe they're going into a um, a big championship game or
Mm.
something like that. And, they want to excel themselves and they want their team to excel. And so we can be working on all sorts of things like that. And again, that emotional regulation
Yeah.
for the coach, because they're seeing what's going on from an outsider point of view. And
Yeah.
sometimes in particular sports, they they aren't allowed to communicate with the athlete as things are actually happening. They can
Okay.
so they can't necessarily um coach from the sidelines.
Right. Hmm.
But they can at other times. And so it's like um dealing with that as well.
Hmm.
So that is another element for coaches to work on. And another one is injury. Injury
Ah,
comes into
yeah.
it a lot. So um, supporting their athletes if they are injured, and kind of supporting them with coming back into the sport, but also that feeling of maybe they're because they cannot compete right now because they're injured,
Yeah.
that feeling of either letting themselves down or letting the team down, and as a coach to be able to help their athlete with that
Right.
and support them. So a lot of
Yeah.
the times I'm giving them techniques that they can use on themselves to um, improve their skills at that on that level of being a coach.
Right. And do you give them communication skills as well for to with the team? You did say see where their team are coming from. But is there anything else specifically that you teach them or work with them on?
I don't like in my process, um it's not something I do with everyone, like
Hmm.
communication skills, and I don't do that in a strict way.
Hmm.
But if that's where that kind of mentorship comes in a little
Yeah.
bit more, um, as from my perspective of being a support to them,
Hmm.
then I may mentor them with communication skills and that kind of
Right.
thing. Um, I don't bring that deeply into the hypnotherapy.
Hmm.
If they want to work on that and I can use suggestions to help them with that. If that's something that they specifically want to work on, then we
Hmm.
can work on that as well. It depends what comes up. So if that
Yeah.
is something that comes up for that client, then we can work on it. But it's not necessarily a strict thing that I do with everybody.
Right. Okay. Um, the mentorship, what exactly does that entail? Is that for coaches only, or is that for anybody who wants kind of coaching mentoring from you instead of hypnotherapy?
Um, it's not something that I do separately,
Hmm.
and it's something that I just do to support my clients.
Right.
I don't offer mentorship as a product that I sell. It's that kind of support that I give in addition
Hmm.
to the hypnotherapy that I'm doing, and in
Right.
terms of like the contact that they can have with me with a particular issue. So
Yeah.
my clients get contact, like text or messaging contact with me in between
Right.
sessions. So they may ask me a certain question or give me an example of something that's happening, and I can suggest some ways to um, deal with whatever is going on or help them to work through it. So that's what I mean by mentorship.
Hmm.
I'm not doing additional hypnosis with them during this time, but then, I can kind of mentor them through that in between the sessions, and then we can bring it to the session and work on it then at a deeper level. And it's also great for rapport building and
Mhm.
continuing to build rapport as things go on. And then
Yeah.
make, and I mean, we all know with that deeper level of rapport, they're going to have even more success with the hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I mean by mentoring.
Hmm. Okay, wonderful. And the last subject, ultramarathons. We haven't touched on that yet. What is so special about ultramarathons? Because he said it is a different thing than most other sports. Why is that?
The difference in the ultra marathons is they need to be able to not necessarily stay in the state of flow for that whole time because a lot of
Hmm.
these races are up to 24 hours long.
Hmm.
But they need to be able to tap into it when they need it or when they
Yeah.
want it. And so it's having the ability to do that over a prolonged period of time and recognize those moments
Mhm.
in that race of when they need to do that,
Mhm.
and especially for them quietening that inner critic when they need to, because that can be quite a powerful thing in
Yeah.
a in an ultra marathon for a runner because it is over such a prolonged period of time. Um, and so, and also, like we were saying before, focusing in on a particular movement, body movement, focusing just on their feet
Mhm.
or focusing on what they can see or what they can hear rather than that inner feeling,
Yeah.
or producing the feeling that they want. And so it's just a different level
Hmm.
of things, and they have to come back to their like toolkit a little bit more often again, just
Yeah.
because they're doing it for
Such a
such
long
a
time.
longer period of time. Um, and a lot of people who are drawn to doing that kind of running have a certain ability to already do that to some extent,
Hmm.
because it takes a certain kind of person to want to do that or be
Yeah.
curious, um, or intrigued about doing it or getting into it. And it is a sport that is more kind of widely recognized as having a mental element.
Hmm.
Again, because if we think about competing and doing an an ultra marathon, I think we can recognize that there's a mental aspect to that,
Yeah.
a more obvious than potentially in other sports.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's why I really love working with ultra marathon runners as well.
Right. Wonderful. So I think we've discussed everything that there is on flow, unless you say, no, I've got something else very important to say. If you do, go ahead. Anything that we
Just
didn't
for
touch.
anyone listening to, I know you said there was a one particular person who wanted to um, kind of get into that space of
Yeah.
working on performance is to when you're working with a client, and again, this doesn't have to be a sports client.
Mhm.
I think when we say performance or optimal performance, our brain goes to athletes or something like that,
Mhm.
but then this can occur for lots of different people. People experience it like creative types, maybe doing art or music. Even surgeons
Mhm.
need to
Oh yeah.
be in a state of flow
Yeah.
when they're when they're working. Video gamers,
Mhm.
and so um, we can put this in any area of our life. So it's rather than being goal orientated with our clients is to become process orientated. And that is
Mhm.
what keeps them in that moment. Even for smoking or weight loss or, dealing with phobias, we we want to kind of have them be more process orientated of how they're going to get to their goal, not just looking at the goal
Yeah.
of like something like weight loss. Um, and so while they're not kind of specifically feeling in a flow state, they if we can instill some of those elements in them, then that will help them. So I would encourage people to, yeah, go to a more process orientated
Mhm.
style of
Yeah.
treating treating clients, and then also think of where they might benefit from some of these things in their own life, of how what would
Mm.
they like to feel flow in, and realizing, maybe they are athletic outside of hypnotherapy, or maybe they're a creative person, um, and they want to have that feeling too. Then we all know self-hypnosis, so
Mhm.
they can work on that themselves, and then by doing that, they'll be able to help clients as well.
Wonderful. One more question. Are they professional gamers? Because you mentioned
There
gamers.
are
God.
there are professional gamers,
Ah,
and some of them are very, very young,
yes.
like teenage, 14, 15, 16.
And you have them as clients.
I've not ever had
Oh,
a professional
luckily,
gamer as a client, but they do exist.
they do exist. Wow.
That is, I've not had that experience yet.
Yeah. No. Well, I've got an amateur one upstairs, so. All right. Thank you so much, Annie, for coming and seeing us. Even though it wasn't for the Chicago conference, I still need to plug the Chicago conference, which is next weekend. No, the weekend after next, the 17th to the 19th of October in Chicago, Arlington Heights. If you haven't got a ticket, get it now. And I'll be putting all the details into the show notes and into the comments. And Annie, you don't have anything to sell, which is something that is quite new because that's our exchange. If you come on the show, normally that you get to plug your stuff. That's I think a common sell anyway, or common exchange. But how can people reach you if they have questions, if they want your services, for example? Because this is also going on YouTube, and I could imagine that many people want to watch this as well and see you after. How can people reach you?
Well, I don't have anything to sell in terms of a particular course that
Yeah.
I'm running or something like that. But obviously, I am a practicing hypnotherapist. So I have packages that I offer for hypnotherapy and NLP, like I explained. So um, that is what I can sell here. So whether you're listening to this and you're looking for help yourself on finding flow purposefully, or you have clients that do, and you want to just talk to me about what I do, and get some more information on that. There's a few different ways. So my website is anniebeals.com. So a lot of information on there. I have a YouTube channel called The Inner
Oh,
Athlete. And so I put content on there as well. And on Instagram, I'm at anniebeals.coaching. And so people can reach out to me in any of those ways.
right. Wonderful. I guess it's best if you send me the details on later on via
For sure.
via message. Otherwise, I'll write it all wrong down wrong. But thank you so much for coming. And everybody, if you watch this, Annie is not, at any conference, or she was at the Michigan conference. However, you can also show what you can do in a demo, in an interview, or in a group session if you would like, inside the Mind Explorations group on Facebook. And if you want to join, if you're a practicing hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, or if you are a student and you want to learn, you can always suggest stuff inside the group, or message me, and we'll find a time, or whether it's actually actually a good idea to have you on. It depends on the subject. I do discriminate whether I want people on or not. Not discriminate in the bad sense, though. Anyway, I love talking bullshit. Anyway, thanks so much, Annie, for showing up, and everybody for coming to the show. That was really interesting. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody who joined us live, and everybody who's watching the replay, thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day, however long that may be.